Man does not have the right to develop his own mind. Those were the words of famed Yale University professor Dr. Jose Delgado, aka the father of mind control. In the 1960s, Dr. Jose Delgado demonstrated electronic mind control when he successfully stopped a charging bull by using a handheld remote. Dr. Delgado connected a radio antenna to electrodes inserted into the bull's brain. He was then able to stop the animal's aggressive charging by electronically manipulating the bull's muscle reflexes. Dr. Delgado was eventually able to manipulate the brains of animals without the use of electrodes. He was able to alter the behavior of monkeys using low-power pulsating magnetic fields. Delgado stated that any function in the brain, like emotions, intellect, personality, and many others, can possibly be modified using his technology. During this time, Delgado's research was limited to animals, but in the Soviet Union, a radio frequency or RF device had been in use for over 30 years to manipulate the moods of mental patients. Due to his early equipment being very problematic, which included wires coming out of the subject's scalp, which were very restrictive and increased the chances of infection, Delgado invented what he called a stymo receiver, a very small radio transmitter which could be implanted beneath the subject's scalp. Now, it's fair to say that Delgado's technology never fully accomplished the types of mind control results in humans that he'd hoped for. The human brain is far more complex than Delgado assumed. With that being said, it is a fact that technology can and often is used to alter human behavior. Not only is this technology used to alter the behavior of mental patients, deep brain stimulation is also used to help treat Parkinson's, epilepsy, paralysis, and chronic pain. Now, some would argue that Dr. Delgado had good intentions for wanting to control the mind. He stated in his 1969 book, Physical Control of the Mind, that humanity was on the verge of conquering the mind and should use neurotechnology to overcome its cruel, violent, and destructive tendencies and create a less cruel, happier, and better man. But as we all know, when powerful information such as his ends up in the wrong hands, the repercussions can be devastating. It just so happens that Delgado's research coincided with the CIA's MK-Ultra mind control experiments of the 1960s. There is no doubt that this type of technology can and has been used to harm people. It's a documented fact that it's used in covert harassment. However, it's not the only weapon used. There are many different types of weapons employed in covert harassment and mind control, as I demonstrated in my last Magitech video using the example of scopolamine. And I will demonstrate in my next Magitech video using a very well documented satanic spiritual example. In keeping with the electronic harassment theme, and for the purposes of this video, there are at least 2 known cases of electronic harassment that went to court in the United States. The first one is the case of Mr. James Walbert, and the second one is the case of Miss Kathleen Watterson. The case of Mr. Walbert resulted in a victory for him. However, it's unclear if Miss Kathleen Watterson won her case. Some say she did, some say she didn't. James Walbert had the first ever federal court case in U.S. history regarding an RFID chip illegally implanted into his body. This was confirmed by Dr. John Hall, experienced in reading MRIs and also confirmed by Dr. Hildegard Staninger, an industrial toxicologist. Here's an article about Mr. Walbert. Last year, James Walbert went to court to stop his former business associate from blasting him with mind-altering electromagnetic radiation. Walbert told the Sedgwick County, Kansas panel that Jeremiah Redford threatened him with jolts of radiation after a disagreement over a business deal. Later, Walbert said he began feeling electric shock sensations, hearing electronically generated tones, and getting popping and ringing sounds in his ears. On December 30th, the court decided in Walbert's favor and issued a first-of-its-kind order of protection, banning Redford from using electronic means to further harass Walbert. Here's an article about Miss Kathleen Waterson. After a landmark court case, when a California targeted individual victim of a secret cell tower RF radio frequency-based directed energy weapon won her case in Joshua Tree Supreme Court against her perpetrator, Waterson versus Arrow, we have been inundated with other targets pleading for help. The win has stirred the strong emotions and hope of hundreds of innocent targeted individuals, all claiming they are being attacked by secret microwave weapons used for mind control and to torture them. So in summary, Kathleen received a conditional restraining order for electromagnetic frequency harassment with penalties of up to 2 years in prison and up to $5,000 in fines for violation of the court order. So far, Michigan, Maine, and Massachusetts have enacted laws against electronic harassment and targeting individuals. The problem with covert harassment is that when victims hear about these cases, they automatically assume that they're being affected by electromagnetic weapons, and this is not always the case. They completely disregard the other methods that are frequently used in covert harassment. For example, as more and more people became familiar with Delgado's research, strangers started accusing Delgado of implanting electrodes into their brains and demanded that he remove them. One woman even went as far as to file a lawsuit against Delgado for $1 million, even though Delgado had never met her. The facts are, some victims are affected by electromagnetic weapons. Some victims are affected by chemical weapons. Some victims are affected by spiritual weapons. And some are just mentally ill. Those are the facts.